Hello guys, welcome to Harryverse X. So in this video, we will see what if Thor and Loki found Harry in the cupboard and raised the god of chaos and thunder. If you enjoy these kinds of stories, don't forget to show us some love by hitting the like button and subscribing to the channel. Your support means the world to us. Now, let's start the story. Chapter 1, The Child in the Cupboard. Lightning cracked across the night sky as two figures materialized on the quiet street of Privet Drive. The taller one, broad-shouldered with golden hair catching the moonlight, spun a massive hammer before securing it at his belt. His companion, leaner with sharp features and raven-black hair, glanced around with obvious disdain. Midgard grows more dreadful with each visit, brother, Loki said, straightening the collar of his leather armor. These identical dwellings lack even basic aesthetic consideration. Thor laughed, the sound booming through the silent neighborhood. Not every realm values golden spires and rainbow bridges, Loki. Father sent us to investigate the magical disturbance, not critique mortal architecture. Must you always be so loud? We're meant to be inconspicuous. Loki rolled his eyes and pulled a small crystalline device from his pocket. It glowed green, pulsing faster as he turned toward number 4. The energy signature is strongest here. Thor frowned. This ordinary house contains magic powerful enough to register in Heimdall's observatory. Not ordinary magic, Loki murmured. Something, ancient. Familiar yet foreign. He approached the house, the device pulsing frantically now. Something that doesn't belong on Midgard. They moved silently to the door, where Loki placed his palm against the wood. Green energy rippled across the surface, revealing intricate patterns of light. Blood wards, he whispered. Crude but effective. Someone has attempted to shield this place. Thor placed his hand beside Loki's. These wards recognize no threat from us. Curious. They're designed for specific protection. Whatever lurks inside isn't what we're hunting, it's what's being hunted. Loki pushed the door, which swung open without resistance. After you, brother. Inside, the home was aggressively normal, family photos featuring a large man, horse-faced woman, and rotund child adorned the walls. No sign of magic. No sign of anything extraordinary. Your device must be malfunctioning, Thor said, his voice uncharacteristically hushed. Loki shook his head. It's here. Below us. He walked slowly through the living room, following the pulsing light until he stopped before a small door beneath the stairs. A cupboard, secured with several locks on the outside. Who locks a storage closet from the outside? Thor's brow furrowed. Loki placed his hand against the door, closing his eyes. After a moment, they snapped open, emerald fire dancing in their depths. Not what, brother? Who? With a flick of his wrist, the locks clicked open. Thor pulled the door wide to reveal a tiny space, barely large enough for a dog's bed. Instead, a small boy lay curled on a thin mattress, black hair matted against his head, oversized clothes hanging off his thin frame. The child couldn't be more than 5 years old. At the sudden light, the boy jerked awake, pressing himself against the wall. Brilliant green eyes, almost the same shade as Loki's magic, stared up at them, wide with fear but defiant. I didn't do anything, the child whispered, voice hoarse. Thor dropped to one knee, bringing himself closer to eye level. We know you didn't, little one. What's your name? The boy hesitated, glancing between them. Harry. Just Harry. Why are you locked in here, just Harry? Loki asked, his usually sardonic tone softened. I was bad. Made strange things happen. Harry's fingers twisted in his blanket. Uncle Vernon says I'm a freak. Thor's hand tightened on his hammer, storm clouds gathering outside the windows. What things did you make happen? Harry looked down. Teacher's hair turned blue when she said I was lying. Jumped onto the school roof when Dudley was chasing me. His voice dropped to a whisper. Sometimes things float when I'm scared. Loki and Thor exchanged a look. Accidental magic, not uncommon in Asgardian children, but rare among mortals. Those aren't bad things, Harry, Loki said, crouching beside Thor. Those are gifts. Special abilities. Harry's eyes widened. Like magic? Precisely like magic. Loki held out his palm, conjuring a small butterfly made of green light. It fluttered around Harry's head, making the boy gasp. Magic is nothing to fear or punish. Harry reached for the butterfly, and as his fingers touched it, the illusion burst into a shower of golden sparks, not Loki's green magic, but something different. Something uniquely Harry's. Thor's eyebrows shot up. The boy has power. A creak on the stairs interrupted them. A massive man in striped pajamas stood frozen mid-step, his face purpling at the sight of strangers by the open cupboard. Who the bloody hell are you people? Vernon Desley bellowed. Get out of my house. Thor rose to his full height, towering over Vernon. You lock a child in a cupboard and dare speak of violations? Vernon's face shifted from purple to white. That's none of your business. The boy needs discipline. He's not normal. Neither are we. Loki's smile was all teeth as he let his skin shift momentarily to its natural blue hue. Vernon stumbled back, nearly falling. Petunia. A horse-faced woman appeared at the top of the stairs, screaming at the sight of the two Asgardians. Silence, Thor commanded, his voice crackling with electricity. The woman's scream cut off as if physically blocked. You will explain why this child lives beneath your stairs while your son sleeps comfortably above. Petunia's hand fluttered to her throat. He was left on our doorstep. We never wanted him. His freakish parents got themselves blown up, and we were stuck with him. Harry flinched at the words, and several items in the hallway began to rattle. Blown up? Loki asked, his voice dangerously soft. You told the child his parents died in an accident. Car crash, Harry whispered. They died in a car crash. Lies. Petunia shrieked. They were murdered by one of their kind. Some dark wizard who came for them and then tried to kill the boy. Left him with that mark. She jabbed a finger toward Harry's forehead, where a lightning-shaped scar was just visible beneath his messy hair. Thor knelt again, gently brushing Harry's hair aside to see the scar. The moment his fingers touched it, a spark of electricity jumped between them. Harry gasped, but not in pain. This is no ordinary mark, Thor murmured, looking to Loki. Loki examined the scar closely, his expression growing increasingly troubled. There's dark magic here. Ancient and corrupted. He turned to Petunia. You knew what he was, yet you treated him as less than human. We tried to stamp it out of him. Vernon had regained some courage, stomping down the remaining stairs. We won't have that unnaturalness in our home. Lightning flashed outside, and thunder shook the house. Rain began hammering against the windows as Thor's anger manifested in the weather. You would stamp out a child's very nature. Thor's voice was deadly quiet. On Asgard, we execute those who abuse children. Vernon paled again, backing up the stairs. Take him then. Take the freak if you want him so badly. Something in Loki's expression shifted, a calculation completing. Perhaps we will. Thor looked at his brother in surprise. Loki, what are you suggesting? This child has power, brother. Power someone tried to destroy. Loki glanced at Harry, who watched them with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. And he clearly deserves better guardians. Father would never, father need not know immediately. Loki smirked. Besides, mother has always wanted another child to teach magic. Thor hesitated, looking back at Harry. The boy sat motionless in his cupboard, clutching his thin blanket, eyes wide as he followed their conversation. Would you like to leave this place, Harry? Thor asked gently. Harry bit his lip. Where would I go? Somewhere with mountains that touch the clouds, Loki said. Palaces of gold. Libraries filled with knowledge of the cosmos. A place where your gifts would be treasured, not feared. Would I have to come back? Harry's voice was barely audible. Thor's heart clenched at the question. Never again, if you don't wish to. The decision flashed across Harry's face. He stood up in his cupboard, all 3 feet of him, and nodded firmly. I want to go. Thor smiled and held out his hand. Harry took it without hesitation. You can't just take him. Vernon blustered from the stairs. There'll be questions. Authorities. He's right, brother, Loki sighed dramatically. We should handle the paperwork. He flicked his wrist, and green light enveloped Vernon and Petunia. Their eyes glazed over. You willingly gave your nephew to distant relatives who will provide proper care. You'll sign any necessary documents and forget our visit entirely. Vernon nodded mechanically. Do you have anything you wish to take with you, Harry? Thor asked. Harry looked around his tiny cupboard, then reached under his mattress and pulled out a tattered photograph, a beautiful red-haired woman holding a baby, standing beside a man with glasses and messy black hair like Harry's. Just this. Loki's jaw tightened. That's all you possess. Harry nodded. Then we shall remedy that immediately. Thor lifted Harry easily, settling him on his shoulder. Hold tight, young one. Your first journey across the Bifrost awaits. They stepped outside into the rain, which parted around them as if repelled. Harry gasped in wonder at this casual display of power. Heimdall. Thor called to the sky. Open the Bifrost. For a moment, nothing happened. Then brilliant rainbow light engulfed them, and Harry's small hands gripped Thor's hair as they were pulled upward through the cosmos. The journey through the Bifrost was unlike anything Harry had ever imagined, streaking through stars and colors, the universe rushing past in a kaleidoscope of light. When they landed, Harry found himself in a golden dome where a tall man with amber eyes and dark skin stood watching them, his hands resting on the hilt of an enormous sword. Prince Thor, Prince Loki, the man acknowledged, his gaze fixing on Harry. And an unexpected guest. Heimdall, this is Harry, Thor said, lifting the boy down from his shoulder. We found him imprisoned on Midgard. Heimdall's penetrating gaze softened slightly. I see much, young Harry. Including the path that brought you here and the many paths that now lie before you. Harry stared up at the guardian, mouth agape. You can see everything. Most things, Heimdall answered with the barest hint of a smile. Though even my sight has limits. The All-Father will be displeased, he added to Thor and Loki. He did not authorize bringing a mortal child to Asgard. The boy has magic, Loki countered. Powerful magic, and a connection to something darker. He belongs here more than Midgard. Heimdall studied Harry for a long moment. Perhaps. But it is not my decision to make. He stepped aside, gesturing toward the rainbow bridge stretching before them. The All-Father awaits in the throne room. He sensed the Bifrost's activation. Harry's eyes widened as he took in the view beyond the dome, a shimmering bridge spanning over endless water, leading to a golden city that gleamed in the light of alien stars. Spires and towers stretched skyward, connected by delicate archways and terraces, more magnificent than anything Harry had ever seen, even in the storybooks at school. Is that where we're going? He whispered. Yes, Thor said, taking Harry's small hand in his. That is Asgard, and it may soon be your home. They set off across the rainbow bridge, Harry trying to take in everything at once. Ships flew overhead without wings. Warriors in gleaming armor patrolled the bridge. Strange creatures moved through the waters below. Loki watched the boys wonder with amusement. Careful, little one. If your eyes get any wider, they might fall out of your head. Harry turned to him, expression suddenly serious. Are you really magic? Like properly magic? I am a master of seer, what you would call magic, yes. Loki created several illusions dancing around them as they walked. There are many kinds of power in the 9 realms. Thor controls lightning and storms. I manipulate energy and reality itself. And I can learn to do that? Harry asked eagerly. You already have your own magic, Thor pointed out. Different from ours, but no less powerful. But it only happens when I'm scared or angry, Harry frowned. I can't make it work when I want. That can be remedied with training, Loki assured him. If the All-Father permits you to stay. Harry's excitement dimmed. What if he doesn't? Neither brother answered immediately. Finally, Thor squeezed Harry's hand. Then we shall find you a better home on Midgard. One where your gifts are respected. They reached the end of the bridge and entered the city proper. People stopped to bow to the princes as they passed, eyeing Harry with curiosity. Harry shrank closer to Thor's side, and used to attention that wasn't negative. They're just curious, Loki explained. We rarely bring mortals to Asgard, especially children. Am I going to get you in trouble? Harry asked in a small voice. Loki laughed. Thor and I have been getting into trouble since before Midgard's continents took their current shape. This is hardly our most outrageous act. Remember the time we took Father's ravens and taught them to speak Vanir insults? Thor chuckled. Or when we released Bilgesnipe in the Great Hall during the ambassador's feast. Loki added. Harry giggled despite his nerves. They approached the palace, a towering structure of gold and crystal that made Harry dizzy to look up at. Guards at the entrance snapped to attention, though their eyes lingered curiously on Harry. The All-Father is waiting, one informed them. Thor nodded grimly and led them through vaulted hallways adorned with murals depicting great battles and cosmic events. Harry tried to take everything in, but it was too overwhelming, the scale, the splendor, the otherworldliness of it all. They reached a massive set of doors carved with intricate knotwork. Thor knelt before Harry, placing his hands on the boy's shoulders. The All-Father, our father, Odin, rules the 9 realms from Asgard. He can be stern. Speak truthfully if he questions you. Show respect, but do not fear him. Harry nodded solemnly. Thor stood and pushed the doors open. The throne room stretched before them, cavernous and magnificent. Golden pillars lined a central aisle leading to a dais where a single throne dominated the space. Upon it sat an imposing figure, a one-eyed man with a silver beard, clad in armor and clutching a great spear. A raven perched on either side of his throne, their black eyes tracking the newcomers. At the foot of the dais stood a woman of extraordinary beauty, her golden hair cascading over a gown of shimmering blue. Unlike the man on the throne, her expression was one of curiosity rather than stern judgment. Thor, Loki, Odin's voice echoed through the chamber. You were sent to investigate a magical disturbance on Midgard. Yet you return with. His single eye fixed on Harry, a child. Father, Thor stepped forward, this boy is the source of the disturbance. His name is Harry, and he possesses significant magical ability. That does not explain why you brought him to Asgard rather than reporting your findings, Odin countered. Loki moved to stand beside Thor. We found him imprisoned by his Midgardian relatives. They were attempting to suppress his magic through cruelty. A regrettable situation, Odin acknowledged, but hardly our concern. Midgardians must manage their own affairs. The woman stepped forward then. Husband, perhaps we should hear the full tale before passing judgment. Odin inclined his head slightly. Speak, then. Why have you brought this mortal child before the throne of Asgard? Thor and Loki recounted what they had discovered, Harry's living conditions, his accidental magic, and the revelation about his parents' murder. As they spoke, the woman, Queen Frigga, moved closer to Harry, studying him with gentle eyes. May I? She asked softly, reaching toward his forehead. Harry nodded nervously. Her cool fingers brushed his scar, and immediately her expression changed. She withdrew her hand as if burned. Odin, she said sharply, this child bears a fragment of dark magic unlike any I have encountered on Midgard. Odin rose from his throne, descending the steps until he stood before Harry. He loomed over the small boy, his single eye piercing. What manner of magic marks this child? Frigga shook her head. Not of the child's making. Something was done to him. Something that tried and failed to destroy him. She knelt beside Harry. Child, may I examine your scar more closely? Harry glanced at Thor, who nodded encouragingly. Yes, ma'am, Harry whispered. Frigga placed her palm over Harry's scar, golden light emanating from her hand. Harry felt warmth spreading through his head, not unpleasant but strange. After several moments, Frigga withdrew her hand, her expression troubled. Soul magic, she announced. The darkest kind. Someone tore their soul and a fragment embedded itself in the child when they tried to kill him. Impossible, Odin growled. Mortals do not possess such knowledge. Apparently some do, Loki observed. Or did. The parents were killed by a dark wizard, according to the ant. This changes matters, Odin admitted, studying Harry with new interest. Such magic should not exist on Midgard. It poses a threat to more than just this child. We can help him, Thor urged. Train him to control his power. And the fragment? Odin asked Frigga. She straightened, meeting her husband's gaze. It can be contained, perhaps eventually removed. But it requires study. The boy should remain where I can monitor its effects. Harry looked between them all, confusion and hope warring on his face. Does that mean I can stay? I won't be any trouble, I promise. I can cook and clean and garden, child, Frigga interrupted gently, if you stay in Asgard, it will not be as a servant. Loki's lips curled into a smirk. Indeed. If the Allfather permits it, you would be raised as a prince of Asgard, alongside Thor and myself. Harry's mouth fell open. A prince? An adopted prince, Thor clarified with a grin. A brother. Odin thumped his spear against the floor, calling for silence. This decision cannot be made in haste. The boy will remain in Asgard for now, under Frigga's supervision. We will determine his permanent status once we better understand his magic and this contamination. It wasn't a commitment, but it wasn't a rejection either. Thor and Loki exchanged victorious glances. Thank you, father, Thor bowed his head respectfully. Do not thank me yet, Odin warned. If the boy proves dangerous to Asgard, he will be returned to Midgard immediately. He won't be, Loki said with unusual certainty. There's something special about this one. Frigga smiled, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. Come, Harry. You must be exhausted after such a journey. Let's find you proper chambers and some clothing suited to a young prince. Harry looked up at Thor and Loki. Will I see you again soon? Of course, Thor assured him. We have much to teach you. And many pranks to plan, Loki added with a wink, ignoring Odin's disapproving grunt. As Frigga led Harry from the throne room, the boy glanced back at the brothers who had rescued him from his cupboard. For the first time in his young life, Harry felt something unfamiliar unfurling in his chest, hope. The chambers assigned to Harry were larger than the entire Dursley house. A massive four-poster bed dominated one wall, while a balcony offered views of the city and the cosmos beyond. Shelves filled with books and curious objects lined another wall, and a sitting area with comfortable couches occupied a corner near a crackling fireplace. These were Thor's chambers when he was young, Frigga explained, watching Harry's astonishment with amusement. I thought you might feel comfortable here. Harry wandered the room in awe, afraid to touch anything. It's all for me. All for you, Frigga confirmed. She opened a large wardrobe revealing clothing in various sizes. These should fit you, though we'll have proper garments made tomorrow. Harry ran his fingers over the soft fabrics, nothing like Dudley's cast-offs. Thank you, he whispered, overwhelmed by the kindness. Frigga knelt to his level. Harry, I sense great power in you, beyond even the foreign magic in your scar. With proper training, you could become extraordinary. I don't feel extraordinary, Harry admitted. Just, weird. Many extraordinary beings begin as merely weird, Frigga smiled. My son Loki certainly did. A knock at the door interrupted them. A servant entered, bearing a tray laden with food that made Harry's eyes widen, roasted meats, fresh fruits, sweet pastries, and a goblet of something that sparkled like liquid gold. You must be hungry after your journey, Frigga said, guiding him to the table. Eat your fill. Harry approached the feast cautiously, unused to being allowed food freely. He took a small portion at first, then more when Frigga encouraged him. The flavors were unlike anything he'd tasted before, richer, more vibrant. As he ate, Frigga studied him thoughtfully. Tomorrow, we will begin assessing your abilities. For tonight, rest and adjust to your new surroundings. After dinner, servants brought warm water for bathing. Harry had never had a proper bath before, the Dursleys only allowed quick, cold showers. The sensation of warm water and fragrant soaps was almost overwhelming. Clean, fed, and dressed in soft sleeping clothes, Harry climbed into the enormous bed, sinking into its comfort. Frigga sat beside him. Sleep well, young one. You're safe here. Harry fought against his heavy eyelids. What if I wake up and this was all a dream? Frigga smiled and waved her hand. Golden light swirled above the bed, forming the shapes of fantastical creatures that danced in the air. This is no dream, Harry. And tomorrow will bring even more wonders. She rose to leave, but Harry's small voice stopped her. Lady Frigga? Do you think my parents would be happy I'm here? Frigga turned back, her expression softening. From what little I know of them, I believe they would be grateful you found people who recognize your worth. She touched his cheek gently. Now sleep. Asgard awaits you in the morning. After she left, Harry lay awake for a while, watching the magical creatures dance above him. For the first time in his memory, he felt safe, wanted, and hopeful about tomorrow. The next few days passed in a blur of new experiences. Harry was measured for proper Asgardian clothing, given a tour of the palace and its grounds, and introduced to various members of the court. Everyone treated him with a mixture of curiosity and respect that left him constantly bewildered. On his third morning, Thor arrived at his chambers as Harry was finishing breakfast. Today, we begin your training, Thor announced with characteristic enthusiasm. Are you ready, young Harry? Harry jumped up eagerly. What are we going to do? Will I learn to control lightning? Or make illusions like Loki? Thor laughed. In time, perhaps. Today we start with more fundamental skills. Every Asgardian warrior must master their body before their power. He led Harry to a training yard where other children, slightly older than Harry, were already practicing with wooden swords and shields. They paused to stare at the mortal boy accompanying their prince. These are the children of Asgard's noble houses, Thor explained. Your future companions. A tall boy with blonde hair stepped forward, eyeing Harry skeptically. Is it true you're from Midgard? Harry nodded nervously. I thought Midgardians were weak, another boy said. My father says they live and die like mayflies. Thor placed a hand on Harry's shoulder. This particular Midgardian has magic powerful enough to register in Heimdall's observatory. I suggest you remember that before passing judgment. The first boy's expression changed to one of interest. Can you show us? Harry looked up at Thor uncertainly. I can't control it yet. Which is why we're here, Thor smiled. Training begins with understanding your own strengths and limitations. He guided Harry to an open area of the yard. Let's see what you can do naturally. For the next hour, Thor put Harry through a series of physical exercises, running, jumping, climbing. Despite his small size and previous malnourishment, Harry proved surprisingly agile and quick. Thor noted with approval that the boy never complained, even when clearly exhausted. You have the heart of a warrior, Thor commended him. But strength comes from proper nourishment and care, which you've been denied. He handed Harry a water flask. Drink. We'll build your strength gradually. As Harry drank, Loki appeared at the edge of the training yard, leaning against a column with a book in his hands. He watched for a few moments before approaching. Turning the boy into a brute already, brother, he asked Thor with a raised eyebrow. Thor grinned. Teaching him the foundations of combat. Not all problems can be solved with tricks, Loki. Nor with hammers, Loki countered smoothly. He turned to Harry. After you've finished playing with sticks and stones, find me in the East Library. We'll see what your magic can truly do. Harry looked between the brothers, sensing the familiar pattern of their good-natured rivalry. Can I learn both? Thor and Loki exchanged surprised glances. An unusual approach, Loki admitted. Most choose one path or the other. But you both have different powers, Harry pointed out. Wouldn't it be better to know everything? A slow smile spread across Loki's face. The child has wisdom. He nodded to Thor. Finish your barbaric exercises. I'll take him after lunch. After Thor's physical training, Harry ate with the other noble children. Initially hesitant around him, they grew more curious as the meal progressed. Is it true you have a lightning scar? A girl with auburn braids asked. Harry pushed his hair back to reveal the mark. The children leaned in to see. Did it hurt when you got it? Another asked. I don't remember, Harry admitted. I was just a baby. My father says you'll bring chaos to Asgard, a dark-haired boy announced. Harry frowned. I don't want to bring chaos. I just want to belong somewhere. The blond boy from earlier, Harry had learned his name was Fandral, slapped the table. Well, I think it's excellent having you here. Asgard needs shaking up sometimes. After lunch, Harry found his way to the East Library, where Loki sat surrounded by ancient tomes and scrolls. The room was vast, filled with shelves stretching to a ceiling so high Harry couldn't see the top. Moving staircases shifted between different levels, and some books actually floated, their pages turning by themselves. Ah, the young wizard arrives. Loki closed the book he was reading. Tell me, Harry. What do you know about magic? Harry shrugged. Not much. Just that weird things happen when I'm upset. Magic is energy, Loki explained, creating a sphere of green light between his palms. It flows through certain beings, certain realms, in different ways. He let the sphere hover between them. Your magic differs from mine, but the principles remain similar: focus, will, intention. He instructed Harry to sit cross-legged on a cushion and placed a feather before him. I want you to move this feather without touching it. Focus on what you want to happen, then make it real. Harry stared at the feather, concentrating hard. Nothing happened. You're trying too hard, Loki observed. Magic isn't forced. It's channeled. He demonstrated with a casual gesture that sent the feather spinning upward. Feel the energy within you. Let it flow naturally. Harry tried again, focusing less on making something happen and more on the feeling of his own magic, the sensation he'd experienced when strange things occurred around him. A tingling warmth spread through his fingers, and the feather twitched. Good, Loki encouraged. Again. By the end of the session, Harry could consistently make the feather float several inches above the ground. It wasn't much, but it was controlled rather than accidental. A promising start, Loki acknowledged. Your magic responds to emotion but can be directed by will. An interesting combination. When will I learn the big stuff? Harry asked eagerly. Like your illusions or Thor's lightning? Loki smiled indulgently. Patience, little wizard. Magic builds upon itself. Master the feather, then we'll discuss mountains. That evening, Harry was summoned to dine with the royal family. It was his first formal meal in the Great Hall, and he approached nervously, wearing his new Asgardian attire, a tunic of deep green with gold embroidery, fitted trousers, and soft leather boots. Odin sat at the head of the table, with Frigga to his right. Thor and Loki occupied places of honor near them. An empty chair waited beside Loki. "Come, Harry," Frigga beckoned. "Join us." Harry climbed into the chair, aware of hundreds of eyes watching from the lower tables. The great hall was filled with nobles and warriors, all curious about the Midgardian child suddenly in their midst. "I understand you've begun training," Odin addressed him directly for the first time since his arrival. Harry nodded. "Yes, sir, I mean, your majesty. Thor is teaching me fighting, and Loki is teaching me magic." "Both disciplines?" Odin raised an eyebrow. "Ambitious." "The boy shows aptitude for both," Thor said proudly. "He has a warrior's heart and a mage's mind." Odin studied Harry thoughtfully. "Few successfully walk both paths." "Perhaps that's because few are encouraged to try," Loki suggested. "We often limit ourselves to what we're told we should be, rather than what we could be." Frigga smiled at this rare moment of philosophical alignment between her sons. "Well said, Loki." She turned to Harry. "How are you adjusting to life in Asgard?" "It's wonderful," Harry said honestly. "Everyone's been kind, and there's so much to learn." "And your dreams?" Frigga asked quietly. "Have they been peaceful?" Harry hesitated. His sleep had been disturbed by strange nightmares, a high laugh, green light, and a burning sensation in his scar. "Not always," he admitted. Frigga exchanged a glance with Odin. "We shall speak more of this later." After the meal, Frigga led Harry to her private chambers, a beautiful suite filled with plants, crystals, and magical implements. A large loom stood in one corner, threads of gold and silver weaving themselves into a tapestry depicting cosmic events. "Sit with me, Harry," she patted a cushioned bench. "I wish to examine your scar again." Harry sat obediently while Frigga's cool fingers touched his forehead. Golden light emanated from her hands, seeping into the lightning-shaped mark. Harry felt a strange pressure, then relief as something dark seemed to recoil from Frigga's magic. "The fragment resists," she murmured. "It is sentient, in its way." "Aware." "What is it?" Harry asked, trying not to sound scared. Frigga chose her words carefully. "A piece of the wizard who tried to kill you. When his spell rebounded, it shattered his already damaged soul, and a fragment attached itself to you." Harry's eyes widened in horror. "There's a piece of a bad wizard inside me." "It is contained," Frigga assured him. "And we will find a way to remove it completely in time." She stroked his hair soothingly. "But you must tell me if your scar hurts, or if you have unusual dreams. It may be the fragment attempting to influence you." Harry nodded solemnly. "I will, I promise." Frigga studied him with compassion. "You bear a heavy burden for one so young. But you need not bear it alone any longer." Later that night, as Harry lay in his enormous bed watching the magical creatures Frigga had conjured dance above him, his thoughts swirled with everything he'd learned. A piece of evil inside him. The promise of power he could learn to control. A possible new family in this golden realm. For a boy who'd spent his life unwanted and afraid, it was overwhelming. Yet beneath the fear and uncertainty lay a growing determination. He would learn everything Thor and Loki could teach him. He would overcome the darkness inside him. He would prove worthy of this second chance. Harry Potter, the boy from the cupboard, fell asleep dreaming not of green light and laughter, but of lightning and magic, storms and chaos, and the possibility of becoming something extraordinary. Days turned into weeks, and weeks into months. Harry's life settled into a routine that would have been unimaginable at the Dursleys. Mornings were spent with Thor, building strength and learning the basics of combat. Afternoons belonged to Loki, developing Harry's magical control and understanding. Evenings often found him with Frigga, who monitored the dark fragment while teaching him about Asgardian history and customs. 6 months after his arrival, Harry barely resembled the scrawny, fearful boy from the cupboard. Regular meals and training had filled out his frame. His movements carried a new confidence, and his green eyes, so like Loki's in color, sparkled with knowledge and mischief. On this particular morning, Thor had arranged something special. "Today, you face your first real challenge," Thor announced, leading Harry to a section of the training grounds he hadn't visited before. A small arena awaited, surrounded by stone benches where several adult warriors sat watching. "What kind of challenge?" Harry asked, eyeing the waiting audience nervously. Thor grinned. "Combat." He gestured to where Fandral and another boy from their training group stood waiting. "You'll face each opponent in turn. Remember what we've practiced." Harry's stomach fluttered with nerves. He'd sparred before, but never in front of an audience. "What if I lose?" "Then you'll learn from it," Thor clapped him on the shoulder. "Victory is sweet, Harry, but wisdom often comes from defeat." The first match pitted Harry against a boy named Ragnar, who was bigger and stronger but slower. Harry remembered Thor's lessons about using an opponent's size against them and managed to dodge most of Ragnar's attacks, wearing him down until he could land a decisive blow with his training sword. The second match against Fandral proved more challenging. Evenly matched in size and speed, they traded blows back and forth until Fandral managed to sweep Harry's legs from under him. Before Harry could recover, Fandral's wooden sword pointed at his throat. "Yield?" Fandral asked with a grin. Harry nodded, accepting defeat gracefully. As Fandral helped him up, Harry felt a surge of frustration, not at losing, but at a missed opportunity. He'd seen an opening in Fandral's defense but hadn't reacted quickly enough. "Well fought," Thor praised him afterward. "You're learning to think strategically, not just react." "But I still lost to Fandral," Harry frowned. "You can't win every battle," Thor ruffled his hair. "The important thing is that you're improving with each one." That afternoon, Harry's frustration carried over to his magic lesson with Loki. They had progressed from moving feathers to manipulating more substantial objects. Today's challenge involved transferring water between vessels without spilling a drop. "Focus, Harry," Loki admonished as water splashed across the table for the third time. "Your mind is elsewhere." "Sorry," Harry sighed. "I'm just thinking about the match this morning." "Ah, Thor's brutish training," Loki smirked. "Did you lose?" "To Fandral. I almost had him, but I wasn't quick enough." Loki considered him thoughtfully. "Perhaps you're approaching it incorrectly. Thor teaches direct combat, strength against strength. But there are other ways to win." He conjured 2 figures of light, representations of Harry and Fandral. "Show me the moment you lost." Harry described the sequence, and Loki manipulated the figures to recreate it. "There," Harry pointed. "That's when he got past my guard." Loki studied the frozen tableau. "I see the problem. You were fighting Thor's way, honorably." His lips curled into a smile. "Next time, try fighting my way." "What's your way?" "Unpredictability. Misdirection." Loki animated the figures again, showing how a faint or unexpected movement could have changed the outcome. Combat isn't just about strength or even speed. It's about outsmarting your opponent. Harry's eyes lit up with understanding. "You mean I could use magic in a fight?" "Not yet," Loki cautioned. "You're not ready to blend those disciplines. But you can apply magical thinking to physical combat. Make your opponent believe you'll do one thing, then do another." They spent the rest of the lesson discussing strategy and deception, with Loki demonstrating various techniques. By the time they finished, Harry was eager to try his new approach. "Can we go back to the training grounds?" he asked. "I want to practice what you showed me." Loki smiled, pleased by the boy's enthusiasm. "Very well. Let's see if we can't improve on Thor's teachings." When Thor found them later, he watched with surprise as Harry moved through practice forms with a fluidity he hadn't displayed before. "You've been teaching him your tricks," Thor observed to Loki, who lounged nearby. Merely offering a different perspective, Loki replied innocently. "The boy has a natural talent for adaptation." Thor crossed his arms, watching as Harry executed a particularly clever feint. "He's combining our styles. Did you expect anything less?" Loki raised an eyebrow. "He's determined to master both paths." "It's unprecedented," Thor mused. "He's an unprecedented child," Loki replied, a rare note of genuine affection in his voice. That evening, Harry was summoned to Odin's private study, a circular room lined with ancient weapons and artifacts. The All-Father stood before a large map of the 9 realms, studying it intently. "You wish to see me, your majesty?" Harry asked nervously. Odin turned, his single eye focusing on Harry with its usual intensity. "Yes, Harry. It has been 6 months since your arrival in Asgard. It is time to discuss your future." Harry's heart raced. Despite the months of acceptance, part of him had always feared being sent back. "Queen Frigga reports that the dark fragment remains contained but resistant to removal," Odin continued. "Your training progresses well with both Thor and Loki, an unusual accomplishment." He gestured to a chair. "Sit." Harry perched on the edge of the seat, trying to look worthy of staying. "I have consulted with Heimdall about events on Midgard," Odin said. "The wizard world believes you missing, possibly dead. Some search for you still. Do I have to go back?" Harry blurted out, unable to contain his fear. Odin studied him silently for a moment. "Tell me, Harry Potter. Where do you wish to belong?" Harry didn't hesitate. "Here, sir. With Thor and Loki and Queen Frigga. I want to stay in Asgard. Even knowing that a piece of darkness resides within you. Even knowing that those who killed your parents may still seek you." "I'm not afraid," Harry said, straightening his shoulders. "Queen Frigga says we'll find a way to remove the fragment. And I'm getting stronger every day. I can face whatever comes." A hint of something that might have been approval flickered in Odin's expression. Bold words for one so young. He moved to a cabinet and withdrew a small golden apple. "Do you know what this is?" Harry shook his head. "The apples of Idun grant the Aesir their long lives and strength. No mortal has tasted one in 1,000 years." Harry stared at the fruit, understanding its significance. "Is that, for me?" "Not yet," Odin returned the apple to its cabinet. "But perhaps someday, if you continue to prove yourself worthy of Asgard." He turned back to Harry. "For now, I have decided you will remain as a ward of the royal family. You will continue your training and education. In time, we will revisit the question of your permanent status." Relief flooded through Harry. "Thank you, your majesty." Odin nodded. "You may go. Send Thor and Loki to me, we must discuss the next phase of your training." Harry hurried from the study, nearly colliding with the brothers who waited outside. "What did he say?" Thor asked anxiously. "I can stay." Harry beamed. "And he wants to see you both about my training." Thor and Loki exchanged significant looks. "Go to your chambers, Harry," Loki instructed. "We'll find you after we speak with Father." Harry reluctantly departed, burning with curiosity about what would be decided. In his chambers, he paced restlessly until a knock came at his door. He flung it open to find both brothers wearing identical expressions of satisfaction. "Well?" Harry demanded. Thor grinned broadly. "Father has approved our proposal. Beginning tomorrow, your real training begins." "Real training? What have we been doing all these months?" "Preparation," Loki explained. "Now we move to the next level. You've shown aptitude for both physical and magical disciplines. It's time to see if you can truly blend them. Like using magic while fighting?" Harry asked eagerly. "Eventually," Thor nodded. But first, we must determine your particular affinity. Harry frowned in confusion. My what? Each wielder of power has natural inclinations, Loki elaborated. I have affinity for illusion and transformation. Thor for lightning and storms. Your magic comes from a different source, but it will have its own nature. How do we find out what it is? Tomorrow, Thor said, we take you to the heart of Asgard. The heart of Asgard, as it turned out, was not a place but an object, a massive crystal suspended in a chamber deep beneath the palace. It pulsed with golden light, casting shifting shadows across the circular room. Harry stared at it in awe as Thor and Loki led him into the chamber. The heart contains the essence of Asgard's magic, Frigga explained, joining them. It responds to latent power, revealing its true nature. Odin stood opposite them, Gungnir in hand. Few outsiders have stood before the heart. You are privileged, Harry Potter. What do I do? Harry asked, his voice small in the vast chamber. Stand beneath the crystal, Frigga guided him to the center of the room. Open yourself to its energy. Do not resist what comes. Harry positioned himself directly under the massive crystal. Its light intensified, bathing him in golden radiance. At first, he felt nothing but warmth. Then, gradually, the sensation changed, power building around him like static electricity. The golden light began to shift, streaks of green appearing within it. The green deepened, swirling around Harry like a cyclone. Sparks of what looked like lightning crackled through the green energy. Fascinating, Loki murmured. Chaos magic with elements of Thor's storm power. The energy continued to build, lifting Harry slightly off the ground. His scar began to burn, and suddenly a streak of darkness shot from it, colliding with the swirling energies. For a moment, they battled, light against dark, order against chaos. Then Harry screamed, a sound of defiance rather than pain. Green lightning exploded outward from his body, shattering the darkness and filling the chamber with blinding light. When the light faded, Harry stood on the ground again, breathing hard. The crystal above had changed, now shot through with veins of green that pulsed in time with Harry's heartbeat. Well, Odin said into the silence. It seems we have our answer. The heart has never responded this way, Frigga whispered, awe in her voice. It's as if it recognizes him. What happened? Harry asked, looking from one stunned face to another. Did I do something wrong? Thor strode forward, dropping to one knee before him. Wrong? Little brother, you've done something unprecedented. He placed his hands on Harry's shoulders. The heart shows your affinity for both chaos and storm, Loki's and my domains combined. And it did more, Loki added, circling Harry with keen interest. It rejected the dark fragment, pushed it back deeper within your scar. He glanced at Frigga for confirmation. She nodded. The fragment is weaker now, contained more securely. What does it all mean? Harry asked, still confused by their reactions. Odin approached, studying Harry with new intensity. It means, young one, that your path is unique. Neither solely a warrior like Thor nor solely a sorcerer like Loki, but something new. He glanced at the crystal, still threaded with green. The god of chaos and thunder, perhaps. Harry's eyes widened. A god? But I'm just Harry. Not anymore, Thor said softly. Now you're Harry Odinson, Prince of Asgard. Odin's head snapped toward Thor. I have not yet granted him that title. But you will, Loki said with certainty, placing a hand on Harry's shoulder. The heart has already acknowledged him as one of us. Odin stared at his sons, one by birth, one by adoption, now both claiming this mortal child as their brother. After a long moment, he nodded once. Very well. From this day forward, he shall be known as Harry Odinson, Ward of Asgard, student of both thunder and chaos. He fixed Harry with a stern look. But godhood must be earned, young one. You have a long path ahead. Harry nodded solemnly. I won't disappoint you, sir. See that you don't. Odin turned to leave, then paused. Begin his combined training immediately. If he is to master both disciplines, he has much to learn. With that, he strode from the chamber, Gungnir thumping against the floor with each step. As soon as he was gone, Thor let out a whoop of joy and lifted Harry onto his shoulders. A brother in both name and power. This calls for celebration. Loki's expression was more measured, but a genuine smile played on his lips. Indeed. Our little lightning bolt has surprised us all. Don't let it go to your head, Frigga cautioned Harry, though her eyes twinkled with pride. This is the beginning of your journey, not the end. I know, Harry assured her. I have so much to learn. And we have much to teach you, Thor promised, spinning in a circle that made Harry laugh. The god of chaos and thunder. Wait until the warriors three hear this. As they left the heart chamber, Harry riding high on Thor's shoulders with Loki and Frigga following, a sense of rightness settled over him. 6 months ago, he'd been a neglected child locked in a cupboard. Now he was Harry Odinson, with a family who valued him and a future brighter than he could have imagined. Whatever challenges lay ahead, the dark fragment in his scar, the mysteries of his dual powers, the expectations of his new status, Harry faced them with newfound confidence. He belonged here, in this realm of gold and magic, with these brothers who had found him and this family who had claimed him. The boy who lived had become something more, something new. And his story was just beginning. 5 years passed in Asgard, each day bringing new lessons and discoveries. Harry grew from a small, uncertain child into a confident young warrior mage, his dual training under Thor and Loki yielding remarkable results. Now 10 years old, Harry stood on a training field, facing off against 3 opponents simultaneously. Fandral, Hogun, and Volstagg, Thor's friends who had taken a liking to the boy, circled him with weapons drawn. Surrender now, little prince, Volstagg called good-naturedly. We have you outnumbered. Harry grinned, green eyes glinting with mischief. Quality over quantity, Volstagg. He raised his hand, and green energy crackled between his fingers. With a flick of his wrist, he sent a bolt of emerald lightning toward Fandral, who barely dodged. No fair using magic. Fandral protested, though he was laughing. All's fair in battle, Harry quoted one of Thor's favorite sayings, then demonstrated one of Loki's favorite tricks by creating 3 illusory duplicates of himself. As his opponents tried to determine the real Harry among the copies, he attacked with a combination of physical strikes and magical energy. Within minutes, all 3 warriors found themselves on the ground, yielding to the young prince. Well done. Thor's booming voice called from the sidelines. He approached, pride evident in his expression. Your integration of combat and seer improves daily. Harry beamed at the praise. After 5 years as Thor's student, his approval still meant everything. Though your illusions still lack substance, Loki drawled, materializing beside them. A competent opponent would have seen through them immediately. They worked well enough, Harry defended, though he took the criticism seriously. Loki's standards were impossibly high, which pushed Harry to constantly improve. Loki ruffled Harry's perpetually messy hair, a rare gesture of affection. Better than last week, at any rate. Perhaps there's hope for you yet. Coming from Loki, this was high praise indeed. Come, Thor clapped Harry on the shoulder. Father wishes to see us. Harry followed his brothers through the palace halls, still occasionally marveling at how thoroughly his life had changed. The frightened boy from the cupboard felt like a distant memory, a story that had happened to someone else. Odin waited in his private study, standing before the cabinet that held Idun's apples. As they entered, he turned, his single eye taking in Harry's disheveled appearance. Training, I see, he observed. With good results, from what Heimdall tells me. Harry bowed respectfully. I'm improving, your majesty. Over the years, Odin had remained more formal with Harry than Frigga or the brothers, but there was genuine approval in his nod. Indeed. Your progress honors your teachers. He gestured for Harry to approach. I have been considering matters of importance regarding your future, Harry Odinson. Harry stepped forward, curious. Odin rarely summoned him unless something significant was occurring. You have lived among us for 5 years, Odin continued. In that time, you have embraced our ways, mastered our disciplines, and proven your loyalty to Asgard. He opened the cabinet, removing one of the golden apples. The time has come to decide whether you will fully join our ranks. Harry's breath caught. He knew what this meant. The apple would grant him the long life and enhanced strength of the Aesir. It would make his adoption complete in every way. There are consequences to consider, Odin warned. Once taken, you can never be fully mortal again. Your ties to Midgard will be altered irrevocably. My true ties are here, Harry said without hesitation. Asgard is my home. You, all of you, are my family. Odin studied him intently. And what of your mortal heritage? The magic of your birth parents flows in your veins. It always will, Harry acknowledged. But I am Harry Odinson now, as much as I am Harry Potter. He lifted his chin. I choose Asgard. A rare smile crossed Odin's face. Well spoken. He held out the apple. Then eat, and join our family in truth. Harry took the fruit reverently. Its golden skin gleamed in the light, and a sweet aroma unlike anything he'd encountered filled his senses. With a deep breath, he bit into the apple. The flavor was indescribable, sweeter than honey yet sharper than wine, filling him with warmth that quickly intensified to heat. Power surged through him, racing along his veins, reshaping him at a fundamental level. His vision blurred, then sharpened beyond anything he'd experienced before. Sounds became clearer, sense richer. When the transformation subsided, Harry stood straighter, stronger. He felt different. More solid, somehow, as if the universe recognized him more fully. It is done, Odin declared. Harry Odinson, Prince of Asgard, God of Chaos and Thunder. Thor let out a joyful whoop and embraced Harry in a bone-crushing hug. Welcome, truly welcome, brother. Even Loki looked pleased, clapping Harry on the shoulder when Thor finally released him. Now perhaps you'll live long enough to master those illusions properly. Harry laughed, overwhelmed by the moment and the changes still settling within him. I can feel it, everything's sharper, clearer. The enhancement of your senses is just the beginning, Odin informed him. Your strength will increase, your reflexes quicken, your endurance multiply. Your magical abilities will likely undergo changes as well, as your Midgardian and Asgardian powers fully merge. We must celebrate. Thor declared. A feast worthy of our brother's ascension. Odin nodded his permission, and Thor immediately began planning the festivities, dragging Loki into the discussion despite his protests. As they debated whether to include a ceremonial hunt or simply move straight to the feasting, Harry approached Odin. Thank you, he said quietly. For everything. For allowing Thor and Loki to bring me here, for letting me stay, for accepting me. Odin regarded him thoughtfully. You have earned your place, Harry Odinson. Remember that a prince of Asgard bears responsibilities as well as privileges. You represent our realm now, in all things. I understand, Harry promised. I won't disappoint you. See that you don't. Odin's tone was stern, but a hint of warmth colored his words. Now go with your brothers. I believe Thor is determined to celebrate until dawn. The feast lasted 3 days, as was Asgardian custom for significant events. Warriors and nobles from across the realm came to honor the newest prince, bringing gifts and pledging loyalty. Harry, still adjusting to his enhanced physiology, found himself able to participate fully without tiring, another benefit of Idun's apple. On the third night, as the celebrations began to wind down, Frigga found Harry on a balcony overlooking the city, taking a moment's respite from the noise and activity. "How are you feeling, my son?" she asked, joining him at the railing. "Different," Harry admitted. "Stronger, certainly. But also, more connected, somehow. To Asgard, to all of you." He touched his scar absently. "Even the fragment feels different, more contained, less able to influence me." Frigga nodded in understanding. "The apple's power has strengthened your own magic, allowing it to better counter the darkness." She studied him with the penetrating gaze that always made Harry feel she could see directly into his soul. "There is another matter we must discuss." "What is it?" "Your Midgardian heritage." She placed a gentle hand on his arm. "While you have chosen Asgard, we cannot ignore the world of your birth entirely. Particularly now that you approach the age when your wizard magic would typically be formally trained." Harry frowned. "You mean Hogwarts? The wizard school?" "Yes. In less than a year, you will receive an invitation. Heimdall has confirmed this. The wizarding world still searches for you, though less actively than before." "I don't want to leave Asgard," Harry said firmly. "Nor would we send you away permanently," Frigga assured him. "But there may be value in understanding that part of your heritage. Your wizard magic combines with your Asgardian abilities in unique ways. Formal training might help you master that integration more fully." Harry considered this. "What does father say?" "He acknowledges the strategic advantage of understanding Midgard's magical community," Frigga replied diplomatically. "Particularly given the fragment you carry and its connection to your parents' murderer. Thor and Loki. Thor believes you should experience all worlds openly. Loki thinks infiltration and observation would be more prudent." She smiled slightly. "Both, I suspect, would miss you terribly." Harry gazed out at the golden city stretching before them. Asgard was home, more than the Dursleys' house had ever been, more than he imagined any place on earth could be. Yet there was a part of him, the part that kept his parents' photograph under his pillow, that wondered about the world they had known. "I don't have to decide now, do I?" he asked. Frigga shook her head. "Not immediately. But it's something to consider in the coming months." She touched his cheek affectionately. "Whatever you decide, you will always be our son. Asgard will always be your home. And I will always be grateful that Thor and Loki found me that night," Harry replied, leaning into her touch. "I can't imagine what my life would have been otherwise." As if summoned by their names, Thor and Loki appeared in the doorway. "There you are." Thor boomed. "Hiding from your own celebration." "Strategic retreat," Harry corrected with a grin. "Even gods need quiet moments." "Speaking of which," Loki said, "your presence is required for the final toast. Then you can escape the barbarians and their endless drinking songs." Frigga laughed softly. "Go, enjoy your night. We'll speak more of Midgard another time." Harry rejoined the feast, pushing thoughts of wizard schools and his mortal heritage aside for the moment. Tonight was for Asgard, for family, for the completion of a journey that had begun in a cupboard under the stairs and led to the halls of gods. Whatever the future held, whatever decisions awaited him regarding Hogwarts and the wizarding world, he would face it as Harry Odinson, Prince of Asgard, God of Chaos and Thunder. No longer the unwanted child, but a son of two realms, with the power and responsibility that entailed. And as he raised his goblet in the final toast, surrounded by those who had chosen him and whom he had chosen in return, Harry knew with absolute certainty that he was exactly where he belonged. Chapter 3, Worlds Collide. King's Cross Station buzzed with the usual Monday morning chaos, commuters rushing to catch trains, announcements blaring over loudspeakers, families saying hurried goodbyes. Among this ordinary bustle, three figures moved with purpose toward platforms 9 and 10, drawing curious glances despite their attempts at inconspicuous Midgardian clothing. Thor had insisted on a suit, claiming it made him look appropriately paternal, though the formal were strained across his massive shoulders. Loki, more successful in his disguise, wore a perfectly tailored charcoal ensemble that somehow managed to look both expensive and unmemorable. Between them walked Harry, pushing a trolley loaded with his trunk and Hedwig's cage, dressed in jeans and a green sweater. "Remember," Loki murmured, "you're Harry Potter, raised by distant relatives after leaving your aunt and uncle. Nothing about Asgard, nothing about your true abilities." "I know the cover story," Harry assured him, fighting a smile at Thor's obvious discomfort with his tie. "We've rehearsed it dozens of times. And if there's trouble," Thor began. "Call for Heimdall only as a last resort," Harry finished. "I know, brother." They stopped between platforms 9 and 10, studying the seemingly solid barrier that, according to their intelligence, concealed the entrance to platform 9 3/4. "Ingenious," Loki commented. "A dimensional pocket accessible through a targeted portal. Primitive compared to the Bifrost, but effective for its purpose." Thor peered at the barrier skeptically. "You're certain we simply walk through it?" "That's what Hagrid said," Harry confirmed. "Best to take it at a run if you're nervous." "Nervous?" Thor straightened indignantly. "I've faced frost giants and fire demons. A brick wall hardly merits concern." A nearby station guard gave them an odd look, and Loki smoothly redirected their conversation. "Perhaps a practical demonstration is in order." "Harry?" Grinning, Harry adjusted his grip on the trolley and walked briskly toward the barrier. Despite his confidence in the information, he couldn't help closing his eyes just before impact, only to feel a slight tingling sensation as he passed through onto a bustling platform where a scarlet steam engine waited beside a sign reading, "Hogwarts Express." Thor and Loki appeared beside him a moment later, Thor looking triumphant at the successful passage. "Fascinating," Loki observed, studying the hidden platform and the crowd of wizard families saying goodbye to children in various states of excitement. "Their society exists literally alongside the mundane world, separated by nothing more than a simple perceptual barrier." "Keep your observations academic, brother," Thor cautioned quietly. "We're merely guardians delivering our ward to school." Harry took in the scene with mixed emotions. The platform vibrated with an energy completely different from Asgard, less majestic but somehow more immediate and colorful. Children his age darted between groups of parents, some already wearing black robes, others still in Midgardian attire. Owls hooted, cats prowled between legs, and a boy nearby appeared to be struggling with a toad trying to escape his pocket. "Nervous?" Loki asked, noting Harry's expression. "Not nervous," Harry replied honestly. "Just adjusting. It's strange being around so many people my age." In Asgard, Harry had trained primarily with adult warriors or a small select group of noble children. The sheer number of 11-year-olds on the platform was somewhat overwhelming. "You'll adapt," Thor assured him, placing a supportive hand on his shoulder. "You always do." They made their way through the crowd toward the train, aware of the curious glances they attracted. Thor's size alone drew attention, but Harry noticed something else, whispers following in their wake, people doing double takes as they passed. "Your celebrity precedes you," Loki murmured. "Word of your reappearance has spread." Harry nodded, keeping his expression neutral. The return of the boy who lived was apparently big news in wizard circles. He'd need to manage that aspect of his identity carefully. Near the train, they encountered a family of redheads, a plump, kind-faced woman surrounded by several children, including a set of identical twins and a boy who appeared to be Harry's age. "Packed with muggles, of course," the woman was saying loudly. "Now, what's the platform number?" 9 3/4, piped a small girl holding her hand. "Mom, can't I go?" "You're not old enough, Ginny, now be quiet. Percy, you go first." Harry watched with interest as the oldest boy marched toward the barrier and vanished. The twins followed with a fair amount of joking and shoving. When only the youngest boy remained, the woman noticed Harry and his guardians watching. "Hello, dear," she said warmly. "First time at Hogwarts?" Ron's new too. She nodded toward her son, who gave Harry a nervous smile. Yes, ma'am, Harry replied politely. Though I've already figured out the barrier. Of course you did, she said kindly, though her eyes widened slightly as she got a proper look at his face. Good heavens, are you? Harry Potter? Yes, Harry confirmed, recognizing the futility of denying it when his scar was visible. The woman's hand flew to her heart. Mercy me. We'd all thought, that is to say. She collected herself. It's wonderful to meet you, dear. I'm Molly Weasley, and this is my son Ron. Thor stepped forward, extending his hand with formal dignity. Thank you for your kind welcome, Lady Weasley. I am Thomas, and this is my brother Lucas. We are Harry's guardians. Molly shook his massive hand, looking somewhat dazed by Thor's presence. Pleasure to meet you both. Are you related to Harry? Distant family connections, Loki supplied smoothly. We've been raising Harry since he left his aunt and uncle's care. Left? Molly frowned slightly. The rumors said. The train whistle interrupted her, announcing 5 minutes until departure. We should get you settled, Thor told Harry, clearly relieved by the timely interruption. After quick goodbyes to Mrs. Weasley, they helped Harry load his trunk onto the train. Finding an empty compartment, Thor and Loki took a moment for more private farewells. Remember your training, Thor said, gripping Harry's shoulders firmly. Both physical and magical. But use it judiciously, Loki added. Observation before action. I know, Harry assured them, fighting a sudden wave of homesickness before he'd even left. I'll be careful. One of us will meet you at the winter break, Thor promised. And Heimdall watches always. Harry nodded, then impulsively hugged them both, Thor returning the embrace enthusiastically, Loki with more restraint but genuine affection. You carry Asgard with you, Loki reminded him quietly. In your blood, in your power, in your heart. The final whistle blew. Thor and Loki stepped back onto the platform as Harry leaned out the window. Try not to destroy any realms while I'm gone, he called as the train began moving. Thor's booming laugh and Loki's elegant wave were the last things he saw before the train rounded a bend, carrying him away from his Asgardian family and toward the world of his birth. Harry remained at the window for several moments, watching London slide past as the Hogwarts Express gathered speed. The compartment door slid open, interrupting his thoughts. Anyone sitting there? Asked the youngest Weasley boy, pointing at the seat opposite Harry. Everywhere else is full. Go ahead, Harry invited, grateful for the distraction from his unexpected melancholy. Ron sat down, glancing at Harry then quickly out the window, as if afraid to be caught staring. After a moment of awkward silence, he blurted out, Are you really Harry Potter? Harry nodded, resigned to this being the standard opening question from everyone he met. And did you really disappear for years? Everyone thought you were dead. Where were you? And was that massive bloke really your guardian? He looked like he could wrestle a troll. The rapid-fire questions made Harry smile despite himself. Yes, I disappeared. No, I wasn't dead. I've been living with my guardians, you met them. And yes, Thor could probably wrestle a troll, though I wouldn't recommend it. They smell terrible. Ron's eyes widened. Thor. Like the Norse god. Harry silently cursed his slip. Ah, that's just a nickname. Because of his size and, he works with electricity. Oh. Ron seemed mildly disappointed. So where have you been living? Not with those Muggle relatives. No, Harry said firmly. I left them when I was 5. My guardians found me and took me in. Wicked, Ron breathed. Is it true you have, you know? He pointed at his own forehead. Harry lifted his bangs to show the lightning scar, now considerably faded from its original angry red to a silvery mark. So that's where you know who? Yes, Harry confirmed, though I don't remember it. Nothing? Ron asked eagerly. Just a lot of green light, Harry said, repeating the cover story he'd prepared. In truth, his connection to the fragment in his scar occasionally gave him much more detailed flashbacks, but that wasn't information he intended to share. Their conversation was interrupted when the compartment door slid open again. This time it was the Weasley twins. "Hey, Ron," one said. "We're going down to the middle of the train. Lee Jordan's got a giant tarantula down there." "Right," mumbled Ron, looking uncomfortable at the mention of spiders. The other twin turned to Harry with interest. "Harry Potter, correct? Fred and George Weasley at your service." They performed exaggerated bows in unison. "Word spreading down the train that you're on board. Bit of a sensation, you are." "So we've heard," Harry replied dryly. The twins grinned identically. "Modest too. We like that." With a casual salute, they departed, leaving Harry and Ron alone again. "Are all your family wizards?" Harry asked, genuinely curious about wizard lineages. Ron nodded. "I think Mom's got a second cousin who's an accountant, but we don't talk about him much." This launched Ron into explanations about his large family, 5 older brothers, 2 already finished with Hogwarts, and a younger sister. Harry listened with interest, finding Ron's stories of growing up in a wizarding household fascinating compared to both his brief time with the Dursleys and his years in Asgard. "What about you?" Ron asked eventually. "What's it like living with those Guardian blokes?" Harry considered how much to share without revealing his Asgardian connections. "Different," he settled on. "They believe in a lot of physical training alongside magic. Combat skills, survival techniques, that sort of thing." "Sounds rough," Ron commented. "It can be," Harry agreed. "But they're fair. And they actually wanted me, which makes all the difference." The conversation shifted to Hogwarts, with Ron sharing what his brothers had told him about the 4 houses and the sorting ceremony. Harry, who had studied the school's structure extensively during his preparation, nonetheless found Ron's perspective enlightening, particularly his clear preference for Gryffindor and distaste for Slytherin. "Everyone says Slytherin's full of dark wizards," Ron explained. "You know who was in Slytherin?" Harry frowned slightly. "Judging entire groups based on individuals seems unwise," he observed, thinking of Loki's lessons on strategy. "Knowing your enemy's nature is important, but assumptions lead to vulnerability." Ron stared at him. "Blimey, you sound like my brother Percy, except less boring somehow." Their conversation was interrupted when a smiling, dimpled woman slid back their door. "Anything off the cart, dears?" Ron muttered something about sandwiches, but Harry, curious about wizard confections, purchased a selection of everything. Ron's eyes widened as Harry returned with armfuls of chocolate frogs, pumpkin pasties, licorice wands, and other treats unfamiliar to him. "Hungry, are you?" Ron asked. "Curious," Harry corrected, dumping the hull onto the empty seat. "We don't have these where I've been living. Want to share?" "I'm particularly interested in these chocolate frogs." Ron needed no further invitation. As they worked their way through the pile, he explained the collectible cards inside the chocolate frogs and the perils of Bertie Bott's every flavor beans. Harry was examining a card featuring Albus Dumbledore when the compartment door slid open yet again. A round-faced boy looked in tearfully. "Sorry, but have you seen a toad?" When they shook their heads, he wailed, "I've lost him. He keeps getting away from me." "He'll turn up," Harry assured him. "Living things generally return to those they're bonded with." "I hope so," the boy said miserably. "If you see him." He left, shoulders slumped. "Don't know why he's so bothered," Ron remarked. "If I'd brought a toad I'd lose it as quick as I could. Though I brought Scabbers, so I can't talk." He pulled a fat gray rat from his pocket. "He's useless, hardly ever wakes up. Percy got an owl from Dad for being made prefect, but they couldn't have." He stopped, ears reddening. "I mean, I got Scabbers instead." Harry, recognizing Ron's embarrassment about his family's financial situation, smoothly changed the subject. Owls are useful for messages, but I imagine a rat has advantages too. More portable, certainly. Before Ron could respond, the compartment door opened once more. The toadless boy had returned, this time with a girl already wearing her Hogwarts robes. She had bushy brown hair, rather large front teeth, and a bossy sort of voice. "Has anyone seen a toad?" "Neville's lost one," she said. "We already told him we haven't seen it," said Ron. The girl wasn't listening, her attention fixed on the wand Ron was holding. He'd been about to attempt a spell on Scabbers. "Oh, are you doing magic? Let's see it, then." She sat down. Ron looked taken aback. All right." He cleared his throat. "Sunshine, daisies, buttermellow, turn this stupid, fat rat yellow." He waved his wand, but nothing happened. Scabbers remained gray and fast asleep. "Are you sure that's a real spell?" the girl asked. "It's not very good, is it? I've tried a few simple spells just for practice and they've all worked for me. Nobody in my family's magic at all, so it was ever such a surprise when I got my letter, but I was ever so pleased, of course. I've learned all our course books by heart, of course. I'm Hermione Granger, by the way, who are you?" She delivered this entire speech very fast, barely pausing for breath. "Ron Weasley," Ron muttered. "Harry Potter," Harry offered, finding her enthusiasm somewhat reminiscent of Thor's energetic approach to new challenges. Hermione's eyes widened. "Are you really? I know all about you, of course. I got a few extra books for background reading, and you're in modern magical history and the rise and fall of the dark arts and great wizarding events of the 20th century. Am I?" Harry asked, genuinely surprised. "What do they say?" "Well, obviously that you defeated you-know-who as a baby, and then mysteriously disappeared years ago. Everyone thought you were dead." "Where were you?" "With family," Harry said simply, unwilling to elaborate further. Hermione seemed ready to press for details when she suddenly switched topics. "Do either of you know what house you'll be in?" "I've been asking around, and I hope I'm in Gryffindor. It sounds by far the best. I hear Dumbledore himself was in it, but I suppose Ravenclaw wouldn't be too bad." "I'm hoping for Gryffindor too," Ron said. "My whole family's been there." Harry remained noncommittal. "I'll accept whichever house recognizes my nature correctly." Hermione looked at him curiously. "That's an interesting way of putting it. Most people just have preferences." "Preferences don't always align with reality," Harry observed. After Hermione and Neville left to continue their toad search, Ron turned to Harry. "Whatever house I'm in, I hope she's not in it." "Mental, that one." "Eager," Harry corrected. "And intelligent. Both valuable traits in an ally." "You talk funny sometimes, you know that?" Ron said, though not unkindly. "Like you're much older." Harry smiled slightly. "Just different perspectives, I guess." Their conversation was interrupted yet again, this time by three boys entering without invitation. Harry recognized the pale, pointed-faced boy in the center from a brief encounter in Madame Malkin's robe shop during his visit to Diagon Alley with Loki. "Is it true?" the boy demanded. "They're saying all down the train that Harry Potter's in this compartment." "So it's you, is it?" "Yes," Harry confirmed, assessing the newcomers with the automatic tactical awareness Thor had drilled into him. The pale boy was flanked by two larger boys who stood like bodyguards, thick-set and intimidating. "This is Crabbe and Goyle," the pale boy said carelessly. "And my name's Malfoy, Draco Malfoy." Ron gave a slight cough, which might have been hiding a snigger. Draco Malfoy looked at him. "Think my name's funny, do you? No need to ask who you are. My father told me all the Weasleys have red hair, freckles, and more children than they can afford." He turned back to Harry. "You'll soon find out some wizarding families are much better than others, Potter. You don't want to go making friends with the wrong sort. I can help you there." He extended his hand, but Harry didn't take it, remembering Loki's warnings about political entanglements. I appreciate the offer, Harry said diplomatically, but I prefer to judge people individually rather than by family connections. Malfoy's pale cheeks acquired a faint pink tinge. I'd be careful if I were you, Potter. Unless you're politer, you'll go the same way as your parents. They didn't know what was good for them, either. Hanging around with riffraff like the Weasleys will rub off on you. Harry's expression didn't change, but the temperature in the compartment dropped noticeably, a slight manifestation of power he couldn't entirely suppress. That was unwise, he said quietly. Ron had jumped to his feet. Say that again. Oh, you're going to fight us, are you? Malfoy sneered. Unless you leave now, Harry said, still seated but radiating a calm confidence that made even Crabbe and Goyle hesitate. We don't feel like leaving, do we, boys? We've eaten all our food and you still seem to have some. Goyle reached for a chocolate frog, and suddenly jerked his hand back with a yelp as Scabbers the rat hung from his finger, sharp little teeth sunk into his knuckle. Crabbe and Malfoy backed away as Goyle swung Scabbers round and round, howling, until the rat finally flew off and hit the window. All three boys disappeared at once, perhaps fearing more rats were lurking among the sweets. Moments later, Hermione Granger reappeared. What has been going on? She asked, looking at the sweets scattered on the floor and Ron picking up Scabbers by his tail. I think he's been knocked out, Ron said, examining the rat. Then, with greater respect, no, I don't believe it, he's gone back to sleep. You've met Malfoy before? Ron asked Harry after explaining the encounter to Hermione. Briefly, in Diagon Alley, Harry confirmed. He struck me as someone who relies on his family's reputation rather than personal merit. I've heard of his family, Ron said darkly. They were some of the first to come back to our side after you-know-who disappeared. Said they'd been bewitched. My dad doesn't believe it. Says Malfoy's father didn't need an excuse to go over to the dark side. Hermione, still hovering in the doorway, seemed torn between disapproval of the conflict and curiosity about Harry. You'd better change into your robes, she finally said. I've just been up to the front to ask the conductor, and he says we're nearly there. After she left, Harry and Ron changed into their long black robes. Ron's were slightly too short, showing his sneakers underneath. Harry, accustomed to Asgardian formal wear, found the simple robe surprisingly comfortable, if less practical for combat than his usual attire. The train slowed and finally stopped at a small, dark platform. As they exited, a familiar voice boomed over the crowd, Fur's years. Fur's years over here. Hagrid's big hairy face beamed at Harry. All right there, Harry. Good to see ya again. Come on, follow me, any more Fur's years? Mind your step, now. They followed Hagrid down a steep, narrow path that opened suddenly onto the edge of a great black lake. Perched atop a mountain on the other side, windows sparkling in the starry sky, was a vast castle with many turrets and towers. No more than 4 to a boat. Hagrid called, pointing to a fleet of little boats sitting in the water. Harry and Ron were joined in their boat by Hermione and Neville. Everyone in, shouted Hagrid from his own boat. Right then, forward. The fleet of boats moved off all at once, gliding across the smooth lake. Harry studied the castle as they approached, comparing it mentally to Asgard's grand palace. Hogwarts lacked the gleaming gold magnificence of his Asgardian home, but it possessed its own ancient power, a different kind of magic that seemed to pulse from the very stones. After disembarking at an underground harbor and climbing a passageway up to the castle, they reached a huge oak front door where Hagrid knocked 3 times. The door swung open to reveal a tall, black-haired witch in emerald green robes with a very stern expression. The Fur's years, Professor McGonagall, said Hagrid. Thank you, Hagrid. I will take them from here. She pulled the door wide, revealing an entrance hall so large that, for the first time since arriving on Midgard, Harry felt a sense of familiar scale. Stone walls were lit with flaming torches, a magnificent marble staircase facing them led to the upper floors, and hundreds of voices could be heard from a doorway to the right. Professor McGonagall led them to a small empty chamber off the hall, where she delivered a speech about the four houses, Gryffindor, Hufflepuff, Ravenclaw, and Slytherin, emphasizing that each had its noble history and had produced outstanding witches and wizards. The sorting ceremony will take place in a few minutes in front of the rest of the school, she concluded. I suggest you all smarten yourselves up as much as you can while you are waiting. Her eyes lingered for a moment on Neville's cloak, which was fastened under his left ear, and on Ron's smudged nose. Harry, trained by Frigga to always present himself properly as a prince of Asgard, straightened his already immaculate robes. After McGonagall left, nervous whispers broke out about how exactly they would be sorted. Ron believed they might have to perform a test, possibly painful, while others speculated about spells they might need to know. Harry remained calm, having researched the ceremony extensively. It's a magical artifact, he informed those nearest him. It reads your nature and assigns you accordingly. How do you know? Someone asked. Research, Harry replied simply. Before further questions could follow, something happened that made several people scream. About 20 ghosts had streamed through the back wall, pearly white and slightly transparent, arguing among themselves until they noticed the first years. New students, said a fat monk, smiling. About to be sorted, I suppose. A few people nodded mutely. Hope to see you in Hufflepuff, the monk continued. My old house, you know. Harry studied the ghosts with interest. Asgard had its own spirits and spectral entities, but they were rarely so corporeal or interactive as these appeared to be. Professor McGonagall soon returned, ordering the ghosts away and instructing the first years to form a line. They walked through the double doors into the great hall, entering a strange and splendid place lit by thousands of candles floating in midair over 4 long tables where the rest of the students were sitting. At the top of the hall was another long table where the teachers sat. Harry glanced upward and saw a velvety black ceiling dotted with stars. He heard Hermione whisper, "It's bewitched to look like the sky outside. I read about it in Hogwarts, a history." His attention was drawn to Professor McGonagall, who silently placed a 4-legged stool in front of the first years. On top of the stool she put a pointed wizard's hat, patched, frayed, and extremely dirty. For a few seconds, there was complete silence. Then the hat twitched, a rip near the brim opened wide like a mouth, and it began to sing a song about the 4 houses and their qualities. When it finished, the whole hall burst into applause. So we've just got to try on the hat. Ron whispered to Harry. I'll kill Fred, he was going on about wrestling a troll. Harry smiled slightly, imagining what Thor would say about troll wrestling as an admission test. Probably that it showed good character evaluation, if poor health and safety standards. Professor McGonagall stepped forward with a long roll of parchment. When I call your name, you will put on the hat and sit on the stool to be sorted. The sorting began with Abbott, Hannah, Hufflepuff, and proceeded alphabetically. Harry observed each sorting with interest, noting patterns in how quickly the hat decided and which tables cheered for which students. Hermione Granger was sorted into Gryffindor after nearly a full minute with the hat, causing Ron to groan beside Harry. Neville Longbottom, the boy who kept losing his toad, also went to Gryffindor after an even longer deliberation. Draco Malfoy was sorted into Slytherin almost instantly, the hat barely touching his head before making its decision. As Potter, Harry, was called, whispers suddenly broke out across the hall. Potter, did she say? The Harry Potter? I thought he was dead. Harry stepped forward, acutely aware of hundreds of eyes tracking his movement. He sat on the stool, and the last thing he saw before the hat dropped over his eyes was the hall full of people craning to get a good look at him. Said a small voice in his ear. Difficult. Very difficult. And, what's this? Oh my. Oh my. Harry remained calm, though he could feel the hat's surprise rippling through their connection. You're not merely a wizard, are you? The voice continued. Asgardian magic flows through you alongside your birth heritage. A prince of two realms. I haven't sorted anyone like you in, well, never. I would appreciate your discretion regarding that information, Harry thought deliberately. Of course, of course. The contents of a student's mind are private. Now, where to put you? You have tremendous courage, I see. And intelligence, oh my yes. There's talent, power beyond ordinary measure, and, oh, such a thirst to prove yourself worthy of both your bloodlines. Harry waited patiently as the hat continued its assessment. You would do well in any house, you know. Slytherin could help you achieve greatness, they would appreciate your cunning and strategic mind, gifts from your trickster brother, I see. But there's loyalty too, and fairness, Hufflepuff values. And such a mind. Ravenclaw would nurture that intelligence admirably. And Gryffindor? Harry prompted when the hat paused. Ah, Gryffindor. Your parents' house. You have their courage, certainly. And something of your Thunderer brother's bold nature. But you are more complex than most who sit beneath me. Harry considered carefully. Place me where I can best serve both my heritages. Where I can grow into what I'm meant to be, not just what others expect. The hat seemed to chuckle. Wisdom beyond your years, young god prince. In that case, better be Gryffindor. The last word was shouted to the entire hall. Harry removed the hat and walked toward the Gryffindor table, which had erupted into wild cheers. Percy the prefect stood up and shook his hand vigorously, while the Weasley twins yelled, "We got Potter! We got Potter!" Harry sat down opposite the ghost in the rough he'd noticed earlier, who patted his arm, giving Harry the sudden, horrible feeling he'd just plunged it into a bucket of ice-cold water. He suppressed a shiver, maintaining the composed demeanor Odin had instilled in him for formal occasions. He could see the high table properly now. Hagrid caught his eye and gave him a thumbs up. In the center of the table, in a large gold chair, sat Albus Dumbledore, immediately recognizable from the chocolate frog card and Harry's pre-Hogwarts research. His silver hair and beard shone as brightly as Asgardian metal in the candlelight. Harry's attention was drawn to a pale young man with a prominent turban, who was talking to a hook-nosed, greasy-haired teacher. As Harry watched, the hook-nosed teacher looked past the turbaned man straight into Harry's eyes, and a sharp, hot pain shot across the scar on Harry's forehead. Ouch! Harry clapped a hand to his head, his carefully constructed barriers momentarily faltering. "What is it?" asked Percy Weasley. "Nothing," Harry said quickly, reinforcing his mental shields as Frigga had taught him. The pain disappeared as suddenly as it had come, but Harry's instincts were on high alert. The fragment in his scar had reacted to something, or someone, at the staff table. After the sorting concluded with Zabini, Blaze, becoming a Slytherin, Dumbledore rose to his feet, beaming at the students with his arms opened wide. "Welcome," he said. "Welcome to a new year at Hogwarts. Before we begin our banquet, I would like to say a few words, nitwit. Blubber. Oddment. Tweak. Thank you." He sat back down as everybody clapped and cheered. Harry raised an eyebrow, reminded somewhat of Loki's occasional deliberate eccentricity, a performance designed to make others underestimate him. His philosophical assessment was interrupted when the dishes in front of him suddenly filled with food. Having experienced Asgardian feasts, Harry wasn't as overwhelmed as his fellow first-years by the spread, but he appreciated the variety and filled his plate with a sampling of everything within reach. "That does look good," said the ghost in the rough sadly, watching Harry cut into his steak. "Can't you?" Harry began. "I haven't eaten for nearly 500 years, said the ghost. "I don't need to, of course, but one does miss it. I don't think I've introduced myself. Sir Nicholas de Mimsy Porpington at your service. Resident ghost of Gryffindor Tower." "I know who you are," said Ron suddenly. "My brothers told me about you, you're nearly headless Nick." "I would prefer you to call me Sir Nicholas de Mimsy," the ghost began stiffly, but Seamus Finnegan, another first year, interrupted. Nearly headless? How can you be nearly headless? Sir Nicholas looked extremely miffled. Like this, he said irritably. He seized his left ear and pulled. His whole head swung off his neck and fell onto his shoulder as if it was on a hinge. Someone had obviously tried to behead him, but not done it properly. Looking pleased at the stunned looks on their faces, nearly headless Nick flipped his head back onto his neck and continued, "So, new Gryffindors. I hope you're going to help us win the house championship this year. Gryffindors have never gone so long without winning. Slytherins have got the cup 6 years in a row." Conversation around Harry shifted to family backgrounds. Seamus described his wizard father and muggle mother, while Neville explained his primarily magical upbringing with his grandmother. When attention turned to Harry, he gave the prepared version of his history. "I lived with muggle relatives until I was 5, then was taken in by my guardians," he explained. "They've homeschooled me until now." "Muggles?" Dean Thomas asked. "What was that like?" Harry's expression darkened slightly. "Unpleasant. They didn't approve of magic." Something in his tone discouraged further questions on that topic, and conversation shifted to classes. Percy Weasley was enthusiastically describing the curriculum to Hermione when Harry felt the pain in his scar flare again. He glanced toward the high table, noticing the hook-nosed teacher looking in his direction once more. "Who's that teacher talking to Professor Quirrell?" he asked Percy. "That's Professor Snape. He teaches potions, but everyone knows he's after Quirrell's job. Knows an awful lot about the dark arts, Snape." Harry studied Snape carefully. The teacher's gaze was penetrating, almost as if he were trying to see through Harry's carefully constructed facade. Harry strengthened his mental barriers again, a technique Loki had taught him for resisting magical intrusion. After dessert, Dumbledore rose to his feet again, delivering start-of-term notices that included a warning about the Forbidden Forest and an intriguing prohibition against the third-floor corridor on the right-hand side, to everyone who does not wish to die a very painful death. Harry frowned at this casual mention of mortal danger. Asgardian education certainly involved risk, but it was always calculated, controlled, and proportional to the student's abilities. The evening concluded with the school song, an exercise in magical chaos that would have delighted Loki, as everyone sang the same words to different tunes at different speeds. The Weasley twins finished last with a slow funeral march, and Dumbledore conducted their final lines with his wand. Percy led the Gryffindor first-years through the castle's shifting staircases to their dormitory, located behind a portrait of a fat lady in a pink dress who asked for a password, Caput Draconis. The common room was a cozy, round room full of squashy armchairs, and the boys' dormitory contained 5 four-poster beds hung with deep red, velvet curtains. Too tired to talk much, the boys pulled on their pajamas and fell into bed. Harry, however, remained awake longer than the others, staring through the gap in his curtains at the moonlit grounds visible from their tower window. It had been an extraordinary day, his first real immersion in the world of his birth parents. So different from Asgard, yet with its own magic and wonder. As he drifted toward sleep, Harry couldn't help wondering how Thor and Loki were reporting his first day to Odin and Frigga, and what challenges this strange new world would present to a prince of Asgard disguised as a mere wizard child. The next few days were a crash course in navigating Hogwarts, both literally, with its 142 staircases and doors that weren't always doors, and figuratively, as Harry learned to manage his celebrity status. Whispers followed him everywhere. "There, look." "Where?" "Next to the tall red-haired kid. Did you see his face? Did you see his scar?" People lined up outside classrooms to get a glimpse of him, doubled back in corridors to pass him again, stood on tiptoes to see him over crowds. Harry handled the attention with the royal composure Frigga had taught him, polite acknowledgement without encouragement, neither hiding from the attention nor seeking it. The classes themselves presented different challenges. Harry had to carefully moderate his magical abilities, allowing himself to struggle with new concepts when appropriate despite having already mastered many of the underlying principles through his Asgardian training. Professor Flitwick, the charms teacher, squeaked and toppled off his stack of books when he read Harry's name during roll call. Professor McGonagall, teaching Transfiguration, proved to be strict and clever, qualities Harry respected. She demonstrated her subject by turning her desk into a pig and back again, though Harry noted the molecular transformation was less complete than what Loki could achieve. Transfiguration is some of the most complex and dangerous magic you will learn at Hogwarts, she warned. Anyone messing around in my class will leave and not come back. Their first task was turning matches into needles. Having spent years transforming objects under Loki's tutelage, Harry found this almost laughably simple. To avoid standing out too dramatically, he deliberately took his time, making a show of carefully pronouncing the incantation and precisely moving his wand before completing the transformation. Only Hermione Granger, who managed a partial transformation by the end of the lesson, came close to his result. She gave him a curious look as they packed up their bags. "You've done this before," she observed quietly. "My guardians taught me some basic magical theory," Harry acknowledged, keeping to his cover story. "Theory doesn't usually translate to perfect execution on the first try," she persisted. Harry smiled slightly. "Perhaps I'm a quick learner." Defense against the dark arts, which many students had been looking forward to, proved disappointing. Professor Quirrell's classroom smelled strongly of garlic, which he claimed was to ward off a vampire he'd fought in Romania. His turban, according to him, had been given to him by an African prince for defeating a troublesome zombie. Harry found these claims dubious at best, particularly when Quirrell changed the subject whenever asked for details. More concerning was the persistent ache in Harry's scar whenever Quirrell turned his back to the class. Harry made a mental note to inform Thor or Loki about this reaction during their next communication. Friday brought the first potions lesson, held in the dungeons with the Slytherins. Professor Snape, like Flitwick, began class by taking roll, pausing at Harry's name. "Ah, yes," he said softly, "Harry Potter. Our new celebrity." Draco Malfoy and his friends Crabbe and Goyle sniggered behind their hands. Snape finished calling the names and looked up at the class, his eyes black and cold like distant space between realms. "You are here to learn the subtle science and exact art of potion making," he began in barely more than a whisper. "As there is little foolish wand-waving here, many of you will hardly believe this is magic. I don't expect you will really understand the beauty of the softly simmering cauldron with its shimmering fumes, the delicate power of liquids that creep through human veins, bewitching the mind, and snaring the senses. I can teach you how to bottle fame, brew glory, even stopper death, if you aren't as big a bunch of dunderheads as I usually have to teach." Silence followed this little speech. Harry was reminded somewhat of Loki's more dramatic instructional moments, though Snape lacked his brother's underlying warmth. "Potter," Snape said suddenly. "What would I get if I added powdered root of asphodel to an infusion of wormwood?" Harry, who had studied potion ingredients extensively during his preparation for Hogwarts, knew the answer but sensed a trap in the question. "A sleeping potion so powerful it's called the draught of living death, sir," he answered calmly. Snape's eyes narrowed slightly. "Where would you look if I told you to find me a bezoar?" "In the stomach of a goat, sir. It will save you from most poisons." "What is the difference between monkshood and wolfsbane?" "They're the same plant, sir. Also known as aconite." Snape stared at Harry for a long moment, clearly surprised by his correct answers but unwilling to acknowledge it. "Well, why aren't you all copying that down?" he snapped at the rest of the class. Things didn't improve for the Gryffindors as the potions lesson continued. Snape criticized everyone except Malfoy, whom he seemed to favor. He was particularly harsh toward Neville, who managed to melt Seamus's cauldron into a twisted blob, causing their potion to seep across the stone floor and burn holes in people's shoes. Harry, working methodically with Ron, produced a respectable potion. Snape glanced at it briefly, unable to find fault but unwilling to offer praise, and moved on without comment. "Cheerful bloke, isn't he?" Ron muttered as they climbed the steps out of the dungeon after class. "Fred and George say he always favors the Slytherins, we'll see if they're right." "He seems to have a particular dislike for me," Harry observed. Did you notice how all his questions were directed at me specifically? Almost as if he was testing me. Maybe he's heard you were homeschooled and wanted to see if you were prepared, Hermione suggested, falling into step beside them. Though those were questions from later chapters, not first-year material. How do you know that? Ron asked. I read ahead, she replied, as if this were obvious. You should too, if you want to keep up. That afternoon, Harry received an invitation to visit Hagrid at his hut on the grounds. Ron accompanied him, eager to hear more about the attempted Gringotts break-in that had been reported in the Daily Prophet. Apparently, it had happened on Harry's birthday, the same day he and Loki had visited the Wizard Bank. Hagrid's hut was a small wooden house on the edge of the Forbidden Forest. Inside, hams and pheasants hung from the ceiling, a copper kettle boiled on the open fire, and in the corner stood a massive bed with a patchwork quilt. Make yourselves at home, said Hagrid, releasing a huge black boarhound named Fong who bounded straight at Ron and began licking his ears. Over rock cakes, which lived up to their name in hardness, and tea, they discussed their first week of classes. Hagrid's dismissal of Filch's antagonism towards students as mere grumpiness reminded Harry of Thor's tendency to minimize others' negative qualities. When the conversation turned to Snape, Hagrid's defense seemed half-hearted at best. Why would he hate me on sight? Harry pressed. He doesn't know me. Rubbish, said Hagrid unconvincingly. Why should he? Harry noticed Hagrid's refusal to meet his eyes and filed the interaction away for future consideration. The conversation shifted to Ron's brother Charlie and his work with dragons, then to the Gringotts break-in. Harry read the newspaper article with interest, noting that the vault in question had been emptied earlier that same day. Hagrid, he said casually, this break-in happened on my birthday, the very day we were at Gringotts. It might have happened while we were there. Hagrid definitely didn't meet Harry's eyes this time, offering him another rock cake instead. Harry filed away this reaction as well, suspicions forming about what Hagrid might have been doing at Gringotts beyond escorting Harry to his vault. As they walked back to the castle for dinner, Harry mulled over everything he'd learned in his first week. The magical education itself was interesting but less advanced than what he'd already received in Asgard. The social dynamics, however, were complex and unfamiliar, house rivalries, teacher biases, and the burden of his unwanted fame all created challenges he hadn't anticipated. And beneath it all lay unanswered questions. Why did his scar hurt around certain teachers? What was Hagrid hiding about the Gringotts break-in? And why did Snape seem to harbor such immediate dislike for him? Harry resolved to document these observations in his next communication with Asgard. Thor and Loki had arranged a secure method for exchanging messages through Hedwig, who seemed to possess the unusual ability to travel between realms when directed to Heimdall. That night, after his dorm mates were asleep, Harry penned a careful letter in Old Norse, detailing his observations and concerns while maintaining the casual tone of a child writing home. He attached it to Hedwig's leg, whispering instructions to find Heimdall, and watched as his owl soared into the night sky, gradually disappearing not just from sight but from this realm entirely. Flying lessons were announced for the following Thursday, Gryffindor and Slytherin together, causing a mix of excitement and dread among the first years. Harry approached the prospect with curiosity. He'd observed Asgardian sky chariots and even ridden with Thor during lightning-quick flights on Mjolnir, but never independently controlled his own flight. At breakfast that morning, Neville received a package from his grandmother, a glass ball the size of a large marble called a remembrall, which turned red when the holder had forgotten something. As Neville tried to remember what he'd forgotten, Draco Malfoy snatched the remembrall from his hand while passing the Gryffindor table. Harry and Ron jumped to their feet immediately. Harry moved with the fluid grace of someone trained in combat, his stance casual but perfectly balanced for quick response. The subtle shift in his demeanor wasn't lost on Professor McGonagall, who appeared instantly. "What's going on?" she demanded. "Malfoy's got my remembrall, Professor," Neville explained. Scowling, Malfoy dropped the remembrall back on the table. "Just looking," he claimed, sloping away with Crabbe and Goyle behind him. At 3:30 that afternoon, the Gryffindors hurried down the front steps onto the grounds for their first flying lesson. The Slytherins were already there, as were 20 broomsticks lying in neat lines on the ground. Their teacher, Madame Hooch, arrived shortly after. She had short, grey hair and yellow eyes like a hawk. "Well, what are you all waiting for?" she barked. "Everyone stand by a broomstick. Come on, hurry up." Harry glanced down at his broom. It was old, with some of the twigs sticking out at odd angles, nothing like the sleek racing brooms he'd seen in shop windows. "Stick out your right hand over your broom," Madame Hooch instructed, "and say, 'Up.'" "Up," everyone shouted. Harry's broom jumped into his hand at once, one of the few that did. He noticed that his broom, like Hermione's, had simply vibrated a bit on the ground. Neville's hadn't moved at all. After everyone had mounted their brooms, with Madame Hooch correcting grips, including Malfoy's, who'd apparently been doing it wrong for years, they prepared for their first controlled ascent. "Now, when I blow my whistle, you kick off from the ground, hard," Madame Hooch said. "Keep your broom steady, rise a few feet, and then come straight back down by leaning forward slightly. On my whistle, 3, 2, but Neville, nervous and jumpy, pushed off before the whistle touched Madame Hooch's lips. "Come back, boy," she shouted, but Neville was rising straight up like a cork shot out of a bottle, 12 feet, 20 feet, 30 feet. Harry saw his scared white face look down at the ground falling away, saw him gasp, slip sideways off the broom and, without conscious thought, Harry kicked off from the ground, rocketing upward with far greater speed and control than a first-time flyer should possess. As Neville began to fall, Harry intercepted him midair, catching him by the wrist when he was already 15 feet from the ground. The sudden weight caused Harry's broom to drop alarmingly, but he adjusted his balance with the instinctive skill of someone who trained in aerial combat with Thor, bringing them to a controlled, if somewhat rough, landing. The entire incident took less than 10 seconds. "Are you all right?" Harry asked Neville, who was pale but nodding. Madame Hooch hurried over, her face as white as Neville's. "Good heavens, Mr. Potter. That was either the most reckless or most impressive piece of flying I've ever seen from a first year." Harry realized belatedly that he'd revealed far more skill than a novice should possess. "I just reacted," he offered, which was truthful if incomplete. Before Madame Hooch could respond, Malfoy's drawling voice cut in. "Pure luck, I'd say. Potter probably can't tell one end of a broom from the other." "That will do, Mr. Malfoy," Madame Hooch said sharply. "Mr. Potter, while your actions were well-intentioned, students are not to fly without supervision. However, given the circumstances." She hesitated, clearly torn between enforcing rules and acknowledging that Harry had prevented a potentially serious injury. "I understand, Professor," Harry said respectfully. "It won't happen again." "See that it doesn't," she replied, though without much conviction. "Now, let's continue with the lesson." The remainder of the flying lesson passed without incident, though Harry noticed both his fellow students and Madame Hooch watching him more closely. He deliberately performed at a level consistent with a talented beginner rather than the experienced aerial combatant he was. As they returned to the castle afterward, Ron clapped him on the back enthusiastically. "That was bloody brilliant, Harry. Where'd you learn to fly like that?" "I didn't," Harry maintained his cover. "Just instinct, I guess." "Some instinct," Seamus commented. "Looked like you'd been flying for years." Harry shrugged noncommittally, eager to change the subject. Before he could, however, they were intercepted by Professor McGonagall, her expression unreadable. "Mr. Potter, come with me, please." Harry followed her silently, wondering if his display during flying lessons had raised suspicions. Ron gave him a sympathetic look as they parted, clearly assuming Harry was in trouble. To his surprise, McGonagall led him not to her office but to a classroom where she asked Professor Flitwick to borrow Wood. A burly fifth-year boy emerged from Flitwick's class looking confused. "Potter, this is Oliver Wood." "Wood, I found you a seeker." Wood's expression changed from puzzlement to delight. "Are you serious, Professor?" "Absolutely," said Professor McGonagall. The boy's a natural. I've never seen anything like it. Was that your first time on a broomstick, Potter? Harry hesitated, then nodded. It was his first time on a wizard's broomstick, technically. He caught a falling student in mid-air after a 50-foot dive, McGonagall told Wood. Didn't even scratch himself. Charlie Weasley couldn't have done it. Ever seen a game of Quidditch, Potter? Wood asked excitedly. Wood's captain of the Gryffindor team, McGonagall explained. He's just the build for a seeker, too, said Wood, circling Harry and examining him critically. Light, speedy, we'll need to get him a decent broom, Professor, a Nimbus 2000 or a Cleansweep 7, I'd say. I shall speak to Professor Dumbledore about bending the first-year rule. Heaven knows, we need a better team than last year. Flattened in that last match by Slytherin, I couldn't look Severus Snape in the face for weeks. Professor McGonagall peered sternly over her glasses at Harry. I want to hear you're training hard, Potter, or I may change my mind about punishing you. Then she suddenly smiled. Your father would have been proud. He was an excellent Quidditch player himself. The revelation about his father caught Harry by surprise. It was a rare connection to his birth parents, a fragment of their lives he hadn't known. Thank you, Professor, he said sincerely. After receiving instructions about training sessions from Wood, Harry headed to dinner, still processing this unexpected turn of events. He'd heard of Quidditch, of course, during his preparation for Hogwarts, but hadn't anticipated actually playing. Ron was stunned by the news. Seeker, he said. But first years never, you must be the youngest house player in about a century, said Harry, repeating Wood's information. I start training next week. Congratulations, said an unexpected voice. Harry looked up to see Hermione standing nearby. Professor McGonagall must have been very impressed with your flying. Thanks, Harry replied, somewhat surprised by her approval. Thus far, Hermione had been strictly by the book about rules. Just be careful, she added. Quidditch can be dangerous. So I've heard, Harry said, thinking that compared to training with Thor, a game on broomsticks seemed relatively tame. Before they could discuss it further, Fred and George Weasley hurried over, congratulating Harry in hushed tones before slipping away to their own secret activities. After they left, Harry noticed Malfoy approaching with Crabbe and Goyle. Having a last meal, Potter? When are you getting the train back to your Muggle guardians? You're a lot braver now that you're back on the ground and you've got your little friends with you, said Harry coolly, assessing the three boys with the tactical eye Thor had trained into him. They were bigger but slower, relying on intimidation rather than skill. I'd take you on any time on my own, said Malfoy. Tonight, if you want. Wizard's duel. Wands only, no contact. What's the matter? Never heard of a wizard's duel before, I suppose. Of course he has, said Ron, jumping in. I'm his second, who's yours? Malfoy looked at Crabbe and Goyle, sizing them up. Crabbe, he said. Midnight all right? We'll meet you in the trophy room, that's always unlocked. When Malfoy had gone, Harry turned to Ron. What exactly is a wizard's duel? And what do you mean, you're my second? A second's there to take over if you die, said Ron casually. Then, catching the look on Harry's face, he added quickly, but people only die in proper duels, you know, with real wizards. The most you and Malfoy'll be able to do is send sparks at each other. Neither of you knows enough magic to do any real damage. And if I wave my wand and nothing happens? Harry asked, though he knew perfectly well he could do far more damage than Ron imagined. Throw it away and punch him on the nose, Ron suggested. Excuse me, interjected Hermione, who'd been listening with disapproval. I couldn't help overhearing what you and Malfoy were saying. Bet you could, Ron muttered. And you mustn't go wandering around the school at night, think of the points you'll lose Gryffindor if you're caught, and you're bound to be. It's really very selfish of you. And it's really none of your business, said Ron. "Goodbye," said Hermione, stalking off with her nose in the air. Later that night, Harry lay awake considering the duel. He'd never used his wand in combat, though he'd trained extensively in both magical and physical fighting styles in Asgard. The question wasn't whether he could defeat Malfoy, he could do that without magic if necessary, but whether he should expose his abilities at all. In the end, curiosity won out. He wanted to assess Malfoy's capabilities directly, and a controlled duel provided that opportunity. Besides, there was something to be said for establishing boundaries early in their relationship. At 11:30, Harry and Ron pulled on their bathrobes, picked up their wands, and crept across the tower room, down the spiral staircase, and into the Gryffindor common room. A few embers still glowed in the fireplace, turning all the armchairs into hunched black shadows. They had almost reached the portrait hole when a voice spoke from the chair nearest them. "I can't believe you're going to do this, Harry." A lamp flickered on. It was Hermione, wearing a pink bathrobe and a frown. "You," said Ron furiously. "Go back to bed." "I almost told your brother," Hermione snapped. "Percy, he's a prefect, he'd put a stop to this." Harry couldn't believe anyone could be so interfering. "Come on," he said to Ron, pushing open the portrait of the fat lady and climbing through the hole. Hermione followed, hissing warnings like an angry goose. "Don't you care about Gryffindor? Do you only care about yourselves? I don't want Slytherin to win the House Cup, and you'll lose all the points I got from Professor McGonagall for knowing about switching spells." "Go away," said Ron. "All right, but I warned you, you just remember what I said when you're on the train home tomorrow, you're so," but they never discovered what they were, because Hermione turned to the portrait of the fat lady to get back inside and found herself facing an empty painting. The fat lady had gone on a nighttime visit, leaving Hermione locked out. "Now what am I going to do?" she asked shrilly. "That's your problem," said Ron. "We've got to go, we're going to be late." They hadn't even reached the end of the corridor when Hermione caught up with them. "I'm coming with you," she declared. "You are not. D'you think I'm going to stand out here and wait for Filch to catch me? If he finds all three of us, I'll tell him the truth, that I was trying to stop you, and you can back me up." "You've got some nerve," Ron began loudly. "Quiet, both of you," Harry interrupted sharply, his Asgardian training kicking in. "Listen." They could hear something snuffling nearby. "Mrs. Norris," breathed Ron. It wasn't Mrs. Norris. It was Neville, curled up on the floor, fast asleep. He jerked awake as they approached. "Thank goodness you found me. I've been out here for hours, I couldn't remember the new password to get into bed." "Keep your voice down, Neville. The password's pig snout, but it won't help you now, the fat lady's gone off somewhere." "How's your arm?" Harry asked, remembering Neville's visit to the hospital wing after falling off his broom despite Harry's intervention. "Fine," said Neville, showing them. "Madame Pomfrey mended it in about a minute." "Good, well, look, Neville, we've got to be somewhere, we'll see you later, don't leave me," said Neville, scrambling to his feet. "I don't want to stay here alone, the Bloody Baron's been passed twice already." Ron looked at his watch, then glared furiously at Hermione and Neville. "If either of you get us caught, I'll never rest until I've learned that curse of the bogies Quirrell told us about, and used it on you." Hermione opened her mouth to explain exactly how to use the curse of the bogies, but Harry hushed her and beckoned them forward. They flitted along corridors striped with moonlight from the high windows. Harry led the way with silent efficiency, his enhanced Asgardian senses alert for any sound or movement. At every turn, he expected to run into Filch or Mrs. Norris, but they were lucky. They reached the trophy room without incident. Malfoy and Crabbe weren't there yet. The crystal trophy cases glimmered in the moonlight, cups, shields, plates, and statues winked silver and gold in the darkness. Harry's combat instincts, honed by years of training with Thor and Loki, immediately registered something wrong with the situation. "This feels like a trap," he murmured to Ron. Before Ron could respond, a voice spoke from the next room, but it wasn't Malfoy. Sniff around, my sweet, they might be lurking in a corner. It was Filch speaking to Mrs. Norris. Horror-struck, Ron waved madly at the other three to follow him quickly. They scurried silently toward the door away from Filch's voice. Neville's robes had barely whipped around the corner when they heard Filch enter the trophy room. "They're in here somewhere," they heard him mutter, "probably hiding. This way." Harry mouthed to the others, leading them down a long gallery full of suits of armor with swift, silent precision. They could hear Filch getting nearer, and Neville suddenly let out a frightened squeak and broke into a run. He tripped, grabbed Ron around the waist, and the pair of them toppled right into a suit of armor. The clanging and crashing were enough to wake the whole castle. "Run!" Harry commanded, abandoning stealth for speed. The four of them sprinted down the gallery, not looking back to see whether Filch was following. They swung around doorways and down corridors, Harry in the lead without any idea where they were going. They ripped through a tapestry and found themselves in a hidden passageway, hurtled along it, and came out near their charms classroom, which they knew was miles from the trophy room. "I think we've lost him," Harry said, leaning against the cold wall and wiping his forehead. Neville was bent double, wheezing and sputtering. "I told you," Hermione gasped, clutching at the stitch in her chest, "I told you." "We've got to get back to Gryffindor Tower," said Ron, quickly as possible. "Malfoy tricked you," Hermione said to Harry. "You realize that, don't you? He was never going to meet you. Filch knew someone was going to be in the trophy room, Malfoy must have tipped him off." Harry nodded, mentally adding this tactic to what he knew of Malfoy's character. Not a direct confrontation, but manipulation of authority. Loki would have approved of the strategy, if not the execution. They hadn't gone more than a dozen paces when a doorknob rattled and something came shooting out of a classroom in front of them. It was Peeves the poltergeist, who squealed with delight upon seeing them. "Shut up, Peeves, please, you'll get us thrown out," Hermione pleaded. Peeves cackled. "Wandering around at midnight, ickle first eyes. Tut, tut, tut. Naughty, naughty, you'll get caughty. Not if you don't give us away, Peeves, please." "Should tell Filch, I should," said Peeves in a saintly voice, but his eyes glittered wickedly. "It's for your own good, you know." "Get out of the way," snapped Ron, taking a swipe at Peeves. This was a mistake. "Students out of bed." Peeves bellowed, "Students out of bed down the charms corridor." Ducking under Peeves, they ran for their lives, right to the end of the corridor where they slammed into a door, and it was locked. "This is it," Ron moaned, pushing helplessly at the door. "We're done for. This is the end." They could hear footsteps, Filch running as fast as he could toward Peeves' shouts. "Oh, move over," Hermione snarled. She grabbed Harry's wand, tapped the lock, and whispered, "Alohomora." The lock clicked and the door swung open. They piled through, shut it quickly, and pressed their ears against it, listening. "Which way did they go, Peeves?" Filch was saying. "Quick, tell me. Say, please. Don't mess with me, Peeves, now where did they go?" "Shan't say nothing if you don't say please." "All right, please." "Nothing. Hi-cha. Told you I wouldn't say nothing if you didn't say please." "Ha ha. Hiya." They heard Peeves whooshing away and Filch cursing in rage. "He thinks this door is locked," Harry whispered. "I think we'll be okay." "What, Neville?" Neville had been tugging on Harry's bathrobe sleeve for the last minute. Harry turned around, and saw, quite clearly, what. For a moment, he thought he was back in Asgard, facing one of the creatures from Thor's hunting expeditions. They were in a corridor, the forbidden third-floor corridor, and now they knew why it was forbidden. They were looking straight into the eyes of a monstrous dog, a dog that filled the whole space between ceiling and floor. It had 3 heads, 3 pairs of rolling, mad eyes, 3 noses, twitching and quivering in their direction, 3 drooling mouths, saliva hanging in slippery ropes from yellowish fangs. It was standing quite still, all 6 eyes staring at them, and Harry knew that the only reason they weren't already dead was that their sudden appearance had taken it by surprise, but it was quickly getting over that. There was no mistaking what those thunderous growls meant. Harry groped for the doorknob. Between Filch and death, he'd take Filch. They fell backward, Harry slammed the door shut, and they ran back down the corridor. Filch must have hurried off to look for them elsewhere, because they didn't see him anywhere, but they hardly cared. All they wanted to do was put as much space as possible between them and that monster. They didn't stop running until they reached the portrait of the fat lady on the 7th floor. Pig snout, they gasped, and the portrait swung forward. They scrambled into the common room and collapsed, trembling, into armchairs. It was a while before any of them spoke. Neville, indeed, looked as if he'd never speak again. "What do they think they're doing, keeping a thing like that locked up in a school?" said Ron finally. "If any dog needs exercise, that one does." Hermione had got both her breath and her bad temper back again. "You don't use your eyes, any of you, do you?" she snapped. "Didn't you see what it was standing on?" "The floor," Harry suggested. "I wasn't looking at its feet, I was too busy with it." Something went wrong with this response. "Please try again." Trace ID, 13B83917E821. Go ahead with the next chapter. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.